Have you ever loved someone who saw right through you, layer by layer, thought by thought? Every word she said felt right, too right. She knew I hated onions, knew my favorite bar, even things I never told anyone. I thought that was love, until I found out. She'd been watching me, long before we ever met. I'm a freelance photographer, just turned 30, living alone in a studio apartment with peeling paint and too many plants I forget to water. Most of my work happens after dark. Gallery openings, dive bar gigs, late-night events where I'm invisible behind the lens. I like it that way. Quiet. Predictable. I'm not great at meeting people. I scroll dating apps, but never message. I go to bars and leave after one drink. Still, some part of me believed love would show up. Unexpected, familiar. Like the soft click of a camera shutter when the frame is perfect. And then I met Elena. We both reached for the same Murakami novel at a used bookstore near 12th Street. She smiled, said, "You like this one too?" We stood there for an hour, talking about strange dreams, forgotten records, and horror films from the 70s. Everything clicked. Our first dates were uncanny. She knew my favorite cafe, quoted obscure lines from movies I thought no one remembered. She even stocked the same frozen pancakes I'd eaten since college. I thought I'd found the one. But then, little things started to feel off. She always knew exactly what I liked. Not in a vague, general way, but down to the smallest, strangest details. One night, she made noodles for dinner. No onions. I laughed and said, "How do you know I hate onions?" She just smiled. Lucky guess. Another time, she took me to this bar, hidden in a narrow alley, behind a row of shuttered storefronts. I stopped in my tracks. That place used to be my spot in college. A hole-in-the-wall dive no one ever really knew about. I'd never mentioned it to her, never posted it online. Day by day, the list of things she guessed kept growing. The exact brand of instant pancake mix I liked. The way I hum to myself when I edit photos. Even the fact that I sometimes sleep with the light on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because silence makes me restless. I once joked that I was irrationally afraid of black cats. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me and said, "I know." I hesitated. "Wait, did I ever tell you that?" She shook her head. I just felt it. At the time, I didn't feel alarmed. If anything, I felt understood, seen, like someone had finally read the manual to my mind. I thought it was love, but now I know. Sometimes love and obsession wear the same face. One afternoon, I decided to take a different way home. Not the usual route, but through a few smaller streets, stopping by a supermarket farther away. No real reason. I just felt like walking, clearing my head. I didn't tell anyone. No social media. No trace. That evening, while we were sitting together in the living room, Liam asked casually, almost gently, "Why'd you take the long route today?" The question, so simple, felt like a jolt of electricity. I froze. I was sure I hadn't mentioned it. Swallowing hard, I tried to smile. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, still calm. "You turned left near that laundromat, then went to Starfield. You don't usually go that way." I stared at him. My mind started racing. How did he know? Was he following me? An invisible weight pressed down on my chest. From that moment on, I started noticing more. How he always called just as I got home. How he'd happen to be nearby without me telling him where I'd be. The way he looked at me, not lovingly, but like he was keeping count of something. A few days later, I came home late from work and stopped in my tracks. On my desk was a bouquet of flowers, large, fresh, placed in a glass vase, the exact kind I liked. No card, no note. The windows were locked. The front door showed no signs of forced entry. I knew I had locked it. Minutes later, Liam arrived with takeout. When I asked about the flowers, my voice trembling, he smiled like always. "I borrowed your spare key while you were out. Just wanted to surprise you." It was a simple sentence, but in that moment, I heard something whisper inside me. "You never gave him a key." I sat there forcing a smile, but deep down, my insides twisted, like I was being watched, like I was being held in a cage and hadn't even noticed the lock. I started searching for Elena online, something I should have done from the beginning. But there was nothing. No Facebook, no Instagram, no LinkedIn, not a single trace. It was like she didn't exist. I tried to tell myself she was just private, someone who preferred to stay offline. But deep inside, something heavy was rising, like a shape surfacing from murky water. One evening, she left her phone at home when she went out to grab food. It was unlocked. I only meant to silence it. But something made me pause. In her albums, there was a folder named Him. I tapped it and froze. Hundreds of photos. All of me. Me sipping coffee at my regular spot. Me biking across the bridge. Me asleep on the bus. Me stepping into my apartment building. Some were taken from a distance. Others were close-ups. One, clearly taken from my own bedroom window. My mouth went dry. My chest felt like it was filled with stones. My hands shook so hard, I nearly dropped the phone. She'd been watching me, long before we met. That night, Elena invited me over for dinner. And I went. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted it to be a mistake. Or maybe I needed to know how far she'd go. While she was in the kitchen, I walked slowly down the dim hallway. A door at the end sat slightly ajar. I pushed it open. A small, empty room. And on one wall, hundreds of photos. All of me. Some were years old. Back when I had long hair. When I lived in a different apartment. Some were neatly arranged. Others were scrawled with red ink. 8:13 a.m. Leaves house. First day with short hair. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Sweat soaked my palms. My heart pounded like a drum. Every moment of my life collected, labeled, archived like some obsession. I took a step back. The door still open. the smell of food drifting down the hallway. Then I heard her voice, soft and clear, from the kitchen. "Did you find my room?" I ran out of the apartment, straight to the police. The next day, they searched her place. The room was empty. No photos, no notes, no Elena. They asked me if I was sure about what I'd seen. I moved, changed my number, cut ties with almost everyone. For weeks, I turned off my phone, slept with the lights on, jumped at every knock on the door. Then one morning, I powered it back on, just for a second. A message came in. Unknown number. "Did you sleep well last night?" I froze. I used to think keeping a low profile was enough to stay safe. No social media, no sharing, no check-ins, just silence. But then one day, a message popped up. It described what I drank, where I sat, what I was wearing, details I'd never told a soul. Just a few words. "I like you." And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't alone anymore. I'm a graphic designer. I live alone, work remotely, barely talk to anyone outside of meetings. Quiet, predictable, safe. That's how I liked it. Everything was fine, until one evening, during a business trip, I used a public computer at an internet cafe to send a quick file. I logged into Facebook, 5 minutes. No big deal. At least that's what I thought. The next morning, I woke up to a message. It was from a blank Messenger account. No profile photo, no name, just a gray silhouette. The message read, "You drink black coffee, no sugar. You hate loud music, and you always sit in the far left corner." I froze. They weren't guessing. They knew. Those were things no one else should have known, especially not a stranger. Then I read the last line. "I like you." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just creepy, it was personal. Every morning at exactly 6:15, I got a new message from the same account. At first, they were oddly mundane, just simple observations like, "You wore your gray hoodie yesterday, you looked sad." But then, they got more specific, uncomfortably accurate. One morning, the message read, "You left your spare key under the flower pot, didn't you? A bit careless." I froze. That had only happened once, last week, when I forgot my wallet. No one else knew. One night, I flicked the kitchen light 3 times, trying to fix a faulty bulb. A message came through almost instantly. "That flickering kitchen light must really annoy you." I felt sick. He wasn't guessing. He was watching. He knew things no one should. That I chew faster when I'm nervous. That I always take 3 steps, then glance over my shoulder. I shut down Facebook. Within minutes, I got a friend request from a new account named Old Friend. The message said, "Still reading Murakami before bed?" I changed my phone number. He messaged me on Telegram. His profile photo was a picture of me, taken from behind as I walked up my apartment stairs. I'd never posted it anywhere. The messages kept coming. Morning. Good morning. Night. Sleep well? I know you're still awake. And the tone changed, grew more intimate, like we were in some twisted relationship, only I hadn't agreed to it. I stopped sleeping. Even with the curtains drawn, I felt eyes on me. I stopped going out after dark, stopped turning on lights when I used the bathroom. Every creak, every gust of wind outside made me hold my breath. My life wasn't mine anymore. I belonged to him. That's when I truly began to panic. I bought a new SIM card, changed phones, installed every security app I could find. I deleted all my social media, logged out of every device. None of it worked. The messages still came, right on schedule, like some twisted recurring nightmare. New accounts, new numbers, new avatars. But the tone never changed. I installed a security camera facing my apartment door. The very first night, at 3:17 a.m., the camera recorded the sound of knocking, software rhythmic, as if someone was gently tapping with the tips of their fingers. But no one appeared on screen. The next morning, a message. Your door's a little loose. I could help tighten it. I nearly threw up. I called the police. They came, checked everything, filed a report. No signs of forced entry. They advised me to keep the windows locked. So I did. I locked every latch, installed alarms. I even pushed a heavy cabinet against the front door. But he didn't need to break in. He just needed to exist and leave subtle traces that only I could understand. One morning, I stepped outside and found a photo tucked beneath the flower pot. It was me, standing by my bedroom window, looking out. Taken from a distance, from the building across the street. I crumbled. The photo was printed, no fingerprints, no clues. No one in the building had seen anything. I covered every window with blackout paper, stopped turning on lights at night, lived off canned food, cut my internet completely. Still, he came. That night, lying in bed, I heard it. A faint exhale through the crack under my door. It took me a moment to realize. It was breath, warm, steady, human. Then came the message. Smells like vanilla. New air freshener? I nearly lost my mind. I thought about fleeing, moving home, changing my name. But some part of me refused to believe this was real. I told myself, maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I was just sleep-deprived. Maybe I imagined it. I was wrong. He had never left. He was only getting closer. That night, I made a decision. I was done running. I would disappear completely. I deleted every last account, removed the SIM, unplugged the router, shut every window, blocked every crack where light might sneak in. I wanted to vanish, to become unreachable, to take back control. And for the first time, my phone stayed silent. No message, no ping, nothing. I smiled, just a little, and I slept. But around 3 a.m., a loud crash jolted me awake. Bang! The sound came from inside the apartment. My heart stopped. I slid off the bed and crawled beneath my work desk, barely breathing. Footsteps, slow, heavy. Through the crack in the cabinet door, I saw them. A pair of dust-covered shoes moving cautiously across my floor. He opened drawers, rummaged through shelves. I could hear his breath, thick and deliberate. There was a metallic scent, sweat, a presence I couldn't see, but could feel so vividly, as if the air itself bent around him. And then, his voice, "I know you're here. I see you." I clutched my phone, trembling, and dialed emergency. No words, just a breathless signal for help. Shouting erupted in the hallway. A neighbor yelling. He fled, fast, like a shadow slipping between dimensions. I only caught a glimpse. Tall, thin, long hair. A dark coat that seemed to swallow the light. The police arrived. But there were no signs of forced entry, no footprints, no camera caught anything. I told them everything, every detail. They nodded, wrote it down, then gently suggested, maybe stress had blurred my perception. But I know what I saw. I felt him. He stood inside my home, and he spoke to me. I moved, new city, new apartment, new number, no social media, no trace of who I was. I cut everything out. No Facebook, no LinkedIn, no Spotify. I was determined to be invisible. And for a while, it worked. I started sleeping again, eating, laughing sometimes, quietly. I even believed it was over. Until this morning. I was in the bathroom, half asleep, splashing cold water on my face. When my phone buzzed, one message, telegram, no profile picture, no name, just a line of text that made my stomach drop. "You're awake. I missed you." My hands trembled. Water kept running. My heart felt like it forgot how to beat. I didn't move, didn't answer, didn't breathe. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the screen, knowing exactly what it meant. I had erased everything. But he still found me. Maybe he had never left. Maybe some nightmares don't chase you. They live inside you. Quiet, patient, waiting for the moment. You think you're safe. They say old age is when the world finally leaves you alone. No one stares. No one follows. You become invisible, safe in your quiet corner of the world. But solitude has a strange way of hiding things. Because sometimes, when no one's watching, something or someone starts watching you. And by the time you notice, they've already stepped inside. I'm a woman in my early 60s, widowed, living alone on the 10th floor of an old apartment building. My days are simple, quiet. I water the plants in the morning, brew tea in the afternoon, watch black and white films at night, then go to bed by 9. That's how it's always been. Orderly, predictable, safe. But lately, something feels off. Sometimes at the grocery store, I swear I hear footsteps right behind me. Slow, deliberate, too close. I turn around. No one. Just the cold lights and the hum of the freezer aisle. Then there was the note, folded and slid under my door. You looked beautiful in that wool robe yesterday. I told myself it was a mistake, a prank. Someone meant it for a neighbor. But that night, at exactly 12:03 a.m., the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there was no one there, just the faint breeze curling into the hallway. And from the balcony, the unmistakable scent of lavender. I didn't tell anyone. At my age, people don't take you seriously. They'll say you're lonely, that your mind plays tricks when the silence gets too loud. Or maybe you've read one too many mystery novels. So I kept it to myself. I bought a cheap hallway camera online, the kind with weak battery life and no night vision. It worked. Until one night, the footage went dark, as if someone had covered the lens. No sound, no image, just deliberate silence. The next morning, another note appeared. I know you live alone. The handwriting was slightly tilted, the strokes young dash, like someone trying too hard to be polite. I didn't panic. I've lived through worse: war, loss, hunger. I know fear. I also know how to tame it. But my hands did shake a little as I bolted the door, and every creak in the hallway made my eyes flick toward the peephole. I went to the police. They were kind, but distracted. They promised more patrols, told me to lock my windows and avoid strangers. I nodded, went home, locked both deadbolts, slid a fruit knife into the bedside drawer, and then I started watching. I memorized footsteps, noticed shoes, faces, patterns. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I'd lived long enough to know when something dark is coming, the air changes first. A few weeks later, on a foggy morning, I checked the hallway camera like I always do. One frame made my heart skip. Someone was standing there, right outside my door. He didn't knock, didn't move, just stood still, as if he were listening. The hoodie shadowed most of his face, but I could make out a jawline, a sliver of chin, a sharp nose, enough to feel it. That awful certainty. He was real. I sat frozen in my chair, paused, rewound, frame by frame. Then I printed it out. No shaking, but my throat stayed dry all morning. I grabbed my coat and walked to the nearest police station. Not out of fear, but because I knew this needed to end. A young officer, he couldn't have been older than 30, watched the video, nodded, and called in a colleague. They said they'd check the surrounding cameras, try to trace his path, see where he went. I didn't expect much, but this time they looked at me like someone worth listening to. Days passed. Then a week. They called back. He's gone, they said. Didn't show up on any other footage. Might have just passed through or hid his face well. Maybe left the city. I smiled into the phone, thanked them, polite as always. I hung up, sat still. I didn't believe it was over. I went back to living, but not the same. I changed my grocery time to the busiest hour. I learned to walk softer at night, so I'd be the first to hear a noise. I disconnected the doorbell, closed the curtains, day and night, and for the first time in years, I slept with the bedside lamp on. I thought a lot about what it means to not be believed, not because people are cruel, but because I'm old. Old people forget things, imagine things, confuse details. But I hadn't forgotten. I was still sharp enough to know danger when it stands outside my door. Calm used to be my shield. But now, it wasn't enough. I watched more closely. The shoes passing my floor, the squeak of soles against the tile, a face in the elevator's reflection. I remembered everything. A frayed shoulder seam, a foot that dragged just slightly. I didn't know if he'd come back. But if he did, this time I would be the one to hear his footsteps first. I slowly returned to my old routine. Every morning, I watered the plants on the balcony. I still walked down the street for milk, nodding gently to the shop girl, my hands gripping the basket with a slight tremble. To the outside world, I was back to being the silver-haired widow, frail, polite, with a slow gait and a quiet smile. No more notes, no more shadows on the camera, no more footsteps behind me. Everything, as if it had never happened, except for one small thing. The sparrows. They flew in circles above the balcony, landed on the railing, then quickly took off again. But they never touched the lavender or rosemary pots like they used to. It was as if they sensed something that people couldn't. That night, I stepped out to the balcony. I didn't turn on the light. The city stretched below me like a dusty quilt, still and breathless. I knelt beside the largest lavender pot, removed my gloves. With bare fingers, I scraped gently at the soil. It was soft, damp, slightly warm. The scent of the flowers rose, sweet and gentle. But beneath it, something deeper lingered. A damp, earthy smell, like silence that had been buried too long. I tilted my head and whispered into the soil. I once hoped the police would catch you, but then I realized some things are better handled with your own hands. They say lavender wards off evil, but for me, it keeps secrets better than anyone. I stood up, brushed the dirt from my hands, stepped back inside. The glass door closed behind me, and in the living room, the old clock struck exactly 3 a.m. No knocks, no footsteps, only me and the flowers quietly growing, rooted in secret soil. Someone once asked me why my flowers bloomed so beautifully. I just smiled, poured more tea, and said softly, "Maybe it's the soil." I sat back in the armchair by the window, turned on one of my husband's old records. The melody drifted through the room, gentle and worn. A breeze slipped through the window cracks, carrying the faint scent of lavender. I don't feel afraid anymore, because I know some things, if buried deep enough, will stay quiet forever. No one needs to know. No one needs to look. As long as no one digs it up.
I used to think being home alone didn't scare me. My parents work night shifts, so it wasn't unusual. I'd lock the doors, throw on some podcasts, and sleep easy. But during one freezing week in December, something changed. I wasn't alone, and I realized that way too late. It started on a Tuesday night around 10:40 p.m. I had just gotten out of the shower when my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Stuck on a double shift tonight. Your dad too. Be safe and remember to lock up." I replied, "Got it," and did my usual round. Front door, back door, side entrance, even the basement hatch, all locked. The house was silent, the kind of deep silence you only notice in the winter when even the wind seems to pause. I headed back upstairs, put on a podcast to help me sleep, and crawled into bed. Sometime after midnight, I was jolted awake by a sound, a door creaking open. Not loud, not dramatic, just the soft, unmistakable groan of old hinges from downstairs. I froze. I had double-checked every lock. My room was dark, except for the blue glow of my phone on the nightstand. I strained to hear more footsteps, voices, anything, but the house had gone silent again. After a full minute, I convinced myself it had to be the wind. Maybe the foundation creaked. I fell back into a restless sleep, unaware that this was only the beginning. Something had already entered my home. The next night, it got worse. Around 3:15 a.m., I woke from a nightmare, except something felt off. My room was quiet, but I could hear a faint sound beneath me. Breathing. Not mine, not through the walls. It was coming from under my bed. I didn't move. My eyes were wide open, locked on the ceiling. The breathing was slow, wheezy, almost wet sounding, like someone struggling to stay quiet. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't budge. I grabbed my phone and turned on the screen. As soon as the light blinked on, the breathing stopped. I jumped out of bed, yanked up the blanket, and shined the flashlight underneath. Nothing. The space under the bed was empty, no signs, no explanation. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, or maybe a sound from the vents, but the air in the room felt different now, heavier. The next morning, I found a muddy footprint in the kitchen. Just one, small, almost like a bare heel print, leading nowhere. I live alone. I hadn't gone outside since the night before, and I definitely hadn't walked barefoot on wet ground. That was when I stopped feeling safe in my own home. That evening, things escalated from unsettling to outright terrifying. It started around 6:30 p.m. My dad had emailed me, saying a courier from the hospital would be dropping off some paperwork. That seemed normal, so when the doorbell rang right on time, I checked the peephole without hesitation. A tall man stood on the porch. He wore a dark beanie pulled low, his face mostly obscured by shadows. He held a thick white envelope in one hand and stared straight ahead, not looking at the camera or door. Something about him made my skin crawl. I cracked the door just an inch and asked, "Are you here with the delivery from Mercy Hospital?" He nodded and extended the envelope. I reached for it, and as I closed the door, I heard his voice low and gravelly, whispered through the gap, "Don't fall asleep tonight." I froze mid-motion. I yanked the door back open, ready to confront him. But the porch was empty. No footsteps in the snow, no sign of anyone walking away. I checked the security cam footage. Nothing. The camera never triggered. It was like he had never been there. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every light on, clenching a kitchen knife in one hand and my phone in the other. Every creak of the house made my chest tighten. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone standing just at the edge of the room. When I finally dozed off around dawn, it was with the TV blaring, the image of that man, his silence, that whisper played over and over in my head, and I knew someone was playing a game with me, and they were just getting started. 2 nights later, it hit the breaking point. I hadn't left the house since the whisper at the door. I barely ate, barely slept. I just sat in my room, trying to keep myself awake. But around 1:10 a.m., exhaustion finally won. I nodded off in bed, with the lights on and a flashlight in my hand. I woke up suddenly, unsure why, until I noticed something. The closet door was open. I always kept it shut. Always. I stared at it, heart pounding, trying to remember if I'd left it like that. But no, I was sure, dead sure. Then I saw it, the doorknob turning slowly, creaking back into place. Someone had just closed it. I bolted upright, grabbed my phone, and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I locked it from the outside and stumbled downstairs, hands shaking, heart in my throat. I dialed 911, barely able to speak. The dispatcher told me to wait outside, but I couldn't move. I was frozen on the bottom step, knife in one hand, phone in the other. The cops arrived in under 10 minutes. They searched every room, every closet, the attic, even the basement. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. Just an empty closet and me, looking crazy. But the next morning, my dad opened that same closet to put away laundry and found a cell phone tucked under a pile of winter coats. It was old, beat up, and still recording. The most recent file was time-stamped just 5 hours before. It was me, sleeping. And under that soft, grainy audio, a man's voice whispering, "Ethan, I'm so close." We moved out 2 weeks later. I still don't know how he got in, or if he ever truly left. We moved in with my aunt the next day while my parents looked for a new place. I never set foot in that house again. I couldn't. Every night since, I've slept with a light on. I still wake up sometimes expecting to hear that whisper again, or to see the closet door slowly creak open in the dark. The police never found out who the man was. The cell phone didn't have fingerprints, no data, no ID, just audio files, some as long as 30 minutes of me sleeping, breathing, talking in my sleep. He'd been in the house for days, maybe longer, watching, waiting, moving around when I was unconscious, listening from inside the walls or under the bed. The worst part? I never even heard him come in. If you ever think you're safe because your doors are locked and your cameras are working, think again. Monsters aren't just in movies. Sometimes they're already inside, and they don't need to break in. They just need you to feel comfortable enough to let your guard down. So if you're home alone right now, check the locks, check the closets, and whatever you do, don't ignore the little sounds. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but it's been eating at me for weeks. You hear stories about people finding strangers living in their attics or basements, and you think, that would never happen to me. I used to think that too, until I house sat for my cousin in her place out in the woods. Nothing about the house felt off at first, but by the second night, I realized I wasn't alone, and what I found out, it still keeps me up. This isn't about ghosts, it's about something much worse. So if you're home alone right now, listen closely. My cousin Jess asked me to house sit for her, while she and her fiancé went away for the weekend. Her place isn't huge, just a 2-bedroom home tucked away near the edge of a wooded area outside Spokane. Peaceful, quiet, kind of cozy in a way. I'd been there before during the day, but never overnight. When I arrived Friday evening, Jess gave me the rundown. Feed the cat twice a day, bring in any packages, don't forget to lock the doors. Simple enough, As she was about to leave, she paused and added one last thing. "Don't worry about the attic. The light's busted and it's just filled with junk. You won't need to go up there." She laughed it off like it was nothing. I nodded, thinking nothing of it. The first night was uneventful. I watched a couple of movies, fed her cat, and fell asleep on the couch with the TV on low volume. The place was so quiet, it almost felt unnatural, like the woods outside swallowed all the sound. But sometime after 2 a.m., I woke up, not to the cat, not to a bad dream, to 3 slow, heavy knocks coming from the ceiling above me. I sat up straight, heart pounding. The knocks were loud enough that I knew I hadn't imagined them. 3 clear, spaced-out thuds, like someone rapping their knuckles on wood directly above the living room. The cat, who'd been asleep on the windowsill, bolted out of the room, tail puffed up like a bottle brush. I looked up at the ceiling. The attic hatch was maybe 10 feet away, still closed. I tried to tell myself it was just the house settling, or maybe a raccoon on the roof, but something about the rhythm of those knocks, it felt intentional. I texted Jess, no response. I called. The line rang, then cut to static. I redialed, same thing. On the 3rd try, I swear I heard breathing, just for a second, then silence. Trying to distract myself, I checked the hallway thermostat. That's when I saw it. The attic pull string, the one Jess told me not to bother with, was hanging lower than before. It was subtle. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it had always been that low. But when I turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the hatch, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The dust on the edges had been disturbed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with the lights on, clutching the flashlight like it was going to save me. Every creak of the house made me flinch. The cat wouldn't come near the hallway. She just sat under the kitchen table, eyes fixed on the attic hatch like she was waiting for it to move. The next morning, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe the attic thing was nothing. Still, I stayed out of that hallway as much as I could. That evening, while resetting the Wi-Fi router in the corner of the living room, I found something wedged behind the baseboard, a piece of paper, yellowed and folded. I opened it slowly, expecting maybe an old shopping list or something harmless, but it wasn't that. Written in jagged block letters. "I only come down when it's quiet. You should have kept it quiet." I dropped it like it burned me. My hand started shaking. I ran through the house, checking the doors and windows again, still locked. But when I passed under the attic hatch again, I noticed something else. The pull string wasn't just hanging lower, it was swinging slightly, like someone had just tugged it. I stood there, frozen, flashlight aimed up at the hatch. I didn't dare pull it down. I didn't want to know what was up there. Instead, I backed away slowly and locked myself in the guest bedroom. I pushed a dresser against the door, sat on the floor with a kitchen knife in my lap, and waited. And sometime after midnight, just as I started to drift off, I heard it again. 3 knocks, right above me, followed by the soft sound of breathing. I bolted upright, heart hammering in my chest. The breathing was faint, but steady, wet, raspy, and too close. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't the wind. It was above me, just past the ceiling. I stared up, barely blinking, waiting for it to stop. But it didn't. It got closer, like someone crawling slowly across the attic floor, dragging their limbs. I clutched the knife tighter and backed into the corner of the room, ready to bolt. Then I heard it, a soft thud on the hallway floor just outside the guest room. I froze. The attic hatch was in the hallway. He had come down. A shadow passed under the door. The hallway light was still on, and I could see the silhouette of bare feet standing motionless, just inches from the gap at the bottom of the door. Then, a gentle knock. 3 times. followed by a voice raspy, hoarse, whispering, "You're breathing too loud." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was paralyzed. Seconds passed, then footsteps, soft, slow, fading away. But instead of hearing them go down the stairs, I heard a sound above me again, a metallic scrape. I looked up. The air vent in the ceiling was open, and through the slats, I saw an eye staring back down at me. I screamed, shoved the dresser aside, and sprinted out of the room. Somehow, I had the presence of mind to grab my phone and dial 911. I hid in the bathroom, knife still in hand, as the dispatcher stayed on the line. 10 minutes later, the cops arrived. They didn't find anyone downstairs, but when they checked the attic, they found what I already knew. He'd been living up there, watching, waiting, recording. They found a sleeping bag, food wrappers, a flashlight, and a burner phone hidden in a corner of the attic. The phone had dozens of photos of me, sleeping, walking around, sitting on the couch. One picture showed me lying in bed, taken from the ceiling vent above. Another had a note written across it in red ink. "Tonight?" He'd been there before I arrived. He watched me the entire time. Jess moved out. I haven't slept properly since. Sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I hear someone crawling above my ceiling. So here's my advice. Don't just check your locks. Don't just check your windows. Check above you. That creaking in your ceiling, it might not be the house settling. It might be someone waiting for you to turn off the lights and fall asleep. I used to laugh at those stories. People finding strangers living in their basements or attics. Urban legends, I thought. Clickbait. Then it happened to me. I was living alone in a cheap rental outside Flagstaff, working nights, sleeping during the day. The house was quiet, nothing fancy, with a finished basement I never used. For months, everything felt normal, until one morning, I woke up to see the basement light on. I hadn't touched that switch in weeks. That was the first sign. The second was worse. By the time I saw the third, I realized I was never truly alone. I moved into the house in January. Small, one story, just outside Flagstaff. The rent was cheap, the neighbors were distant but polite, and the place had a finished basement the landlord said was mostly storage. I never used it. Didn't need to. I kept the door shut and the light off. Out of sight, out of mind. I worked nights at a call center, which meant my days were for sleeping. It wasn't ideal, but I liked the quiet. The house didn't creak much, and the isolation gave me space to breathe. No roommates, no noise, just me, a bed, and blackout curtains. The basement door was right next to the kitchen, at the top of a narrow staircase. Every so often, I'd glance at it and get this weird feeling, like I'd see it open one day when I hadn't touched it, but it always stayed closed. For the first couple of months, nothing strange happened. No weird noises, no misplaced items, just silence. Until that Friday morning. I had just gotten home from a long shift. I locked the door behind me, tossed my keys in the dish by the sink, and passed by the basement door. The light underneath was on. I stopped in my tracks. The basement door was shut, but a soft glow leaked through the narrow gap at the bottom. The light was definitely on. I stared at it for a moment, trying to remember if I'd gone down there recently. Maybe the landlord had been by, but he always texted first. I reached for the knob, half expecting resistance, but the door swung open easily. The stairwell was empty, quiet, the yellow ceiling light buzzing softly, like it had been on for a while. I stood there listening. No footsteps, no voices, just the hum of that bare bulb. Eventually, I flicked the light off from the switch at the top and closed the door. Told myself I must have accidentally hit the switch at some point. I went to bed around 10 a.m. When I woke up around noon to grab water, the light was back on, and the door slightly open. I knew I'd closed it. I always closed it. This time, I locked it. There was an old twist lock bolt at the top. I slid it into place, checked it twice, and went back to bed. But that night, before I left for work, the light was on again. I didn't go to work that night. I sat on the couch for over an hour, staring at the closed basement door like it might open by itself. I had locked it. I was absolutely certain. Yet now the light underneath was glowing again, and the bolt was undone. I checked the front and back doors. Still locked, all windows shut. Nothing looked disturbed. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I had and walked slowly to the basement door. My fingers hesitated at the knob. Every instinct screamed at me not to go down there, but I had to know. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended, the light above flickering slightly. The air down there was still, too still. At first glance, the basement was unchanged. Boxes, dust, old furniture, untouched, but something caught my eye in the center of the room. A folding chair, unfolded and facing the stairs, and on the seat, a coffee mug, half full. I didn't own a mug like that. It was old, chipped ceramic with a faded cartoon logo I didn't recognize. I backed away, heart racing. Then I noticed something else. Footprints. Faint outlines in the dust, leading from behind a stack of boxes straight to the chair, and none going back. Whoever had been down here, they didn't leave the way they came. I bolted upstairs, locked the basement door again, and shoved a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep that night, but I stayed up, watching that crack beneath the door. And waiting to see if the light would turn off, or worse, if it would start moving. And for a split second, around 4:13 a.m., I swear I saw a shadow pass by on the other side. By the next morning, I was done pretending I wasn't terrified. I packed a bag and left the house, spent most of the day at a diner with my laptop, trying to distract myself, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the camera app I had installed on my front porch a week earlier. But around 3 p.m., the feed cut out. Signal lost. I rushed back home. When I pulled into the driveway, nothing looked off until I got to the porch. The security camera was gone, just the adhesive mount left behind, dangling from a wire like something had been ripped off. Inside, the house felt heavier, still, and quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. The basement door was wide open. The light was on. I wanted to run. I should have run, but something in me snapped. I grabbed the flashlight and the knife and made my way down. The basement was colder than before. The chair was still there, but now there were 3 mugs on the floor, all empty, like someone had been sitting down here for days, maybe weeks. And next to the mugs was a small, beat-up notebook. I flipped it open. Inside were dates, times, and observations about me. He's awake. He watches TV too loud. He locks the door at 10:06 a.m. every day. And then, the most recent entry. Today he left. Tomorrow I'll say hello. I dropped the notebook and backed up the stairs, locking the door behind me. Then I heard it. Footsteps on the stairs, coming up. I didn't wait. I ran out the front door, barefoot, didn't stop running until I hit the main road. I never went back. I moved out that same week, left everything behind, furniture, clothes, even my laptop. None of it was worth going back for. The landlord didn't ask questions when I terminated the lease early. He just looked at me like he already knew. I filed a police report, but there wasn't much they could do. By the time they searched the place, the basement was spotless. No mugs, no notebook, no fingerprints, just an empty chair facing the stairs, and a fresh cup of coffee sitting on the floor, still warm. I don't know who he was, or how long he'd been down there, but someone had been watching me live and waiting for the right moment to come up. Now, even in my new place, I check the basement light every night before I sleep. Here's my advice. You don't need to hear footsteps or voices to know something's wrong. Sometimes it's the little things, lights you didn't turn on, doors you swore were locked. Trust those moments, because if you wait too long to act, you might not be the one walking back up the stairs. About 15 minutes into the movie, just as the tension on screen was starting to build, I heard something behind me, soft, slow footsteps on the carpeted aisle. I hadn't heard the door open. I turned around, expecting to see someone who slipped in late, but there was no one there, just rows of empty seats fading into darkness. I brushed it off as part of the movie's sound design and kept watching. I'm not the type to scare easily, and I'm definitely not the kind of person who makes up stories for attention. But what happened to me that night still keeps me up sometimes. It was supposed to be just a quiet, late-night movie, something I've done dozens of times before. I didn't think twice about going alone. The theater was nearly empty, the weather was miserable, and I was looking forward to having the whole place to myself. But I wasn't alone. I only realized that after it was too late, and now I wish I'd never gone. I work freelance, so my schedule's pretty unpredictable. One of the perks is getting to do things when most people can't, like catching a late-night movie on a Tuesday. That night, it was raining hard, and the theater near my apartment was showing a late screening of Hereditary, one of my favorites. I've always preferred watching movies alone, especially horror. There's something about sitting in a near-empty theater, surrounded by silence, that makes the scares feel more real. This particular theater was old, kind of run down, with creaky red seats and yellowed popcorn lights in the halls. It smelled like a mix of butter, mildew and dust, not comforting, but weirdly nostalgic. I bought my ticket, grabbed a soda, and walked into Theater 4. It was completely empty. Perfect. I picked a seat dead center, kicked my feet up, and waited for the movie to start. I felt completely alone, peaceful, at first. Then I heard it again. Closer this time. A low, deliberate shuffle, followed by what sounded like breathing, steady and just behind my left shoulder. I turned again, this time faster, heart starting to race. Still nothing. The aisle was empty. I leaned back in my seat and told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the building's old pipes were groaning. Maybe I was just too into the movie. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. I looked down toward the front rows and saw something or someone duck behind a seat. All I caught was a pale sliver of a face and messy dark hair. They weren't watching the movie. They were watching me, and somehow I knew they had been for a while. I sat frozen, eyes locked on the row where I saw that head disappear. The screen flickered with light and shadow, but I wasn't watching the movie anymore. My ears strained for any sound, a breath, a creak, anything, but the theater had gone dead silent, too silent. I told myself to get up, go tell the staff, or at least switch seats, but I didn't move. I just sat there, staring, trying to convince myself that maybe it was nothing. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, in the dark. Not in the same spot, closer. 3 rows in front of me, that pale head slowly peeked up from behind a seat. It rose slowly, deliberately, until I could see the eyes wide open, unblinking, staring right at me. Then I saw it again. I gasped out loud. I wasn't just creeped out now. I was scared. The face didn't move, just stared. The eyes were glassy, the expression off, like the muscles weren't quite working right. I still couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. The hair was wiry, sticking out in every direction, like it hadn't been washed in weeks. I stood up quickly, my seat creaking loud against the silence. The head ducked back down. I walked fast down the aisle toward the exit, but to get there, I had to pass the row where it was hiding. That's when I ran. I didn't care what it was. I just ran. Instead, I saw something I'll never forget. A body stretched along the floor, hidden behind the seats, and above it, a hand holding up what looked like a severed head, mounted on a stick. As I reached it, I instinctively looked down the row, expecting to see someone crouching. I shoved through the exit door so hard it slammed against the wall. My breath was ragged, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I sprinted down the hallway toward the lobby, not daring to look back. My mind raced. Was it a prank, a prop, a sick joke? But no one else was in the theater. No one else should have been there. No answer. The lobby was empty. No staff at the counter. No late-night workers milling about. I looked around, shouting, "Hello. Someone's in Theater 4. Someone's doing something messed up in there." I fumbled for my phone to call the police, but I had no signal. Not a single bar. I glanced outside. The rain was still pouring. The parking lot mostly empty. My car sat all the way in the back, under a flickering street lamp. I didn't wait. I bolted for the exit doors, yanked one open, and sprinted for my car, splashing through puddles. I didn't care how soaked I got. I just needed to be inside. Doors locked, engine running. I threw myself into the driver's seat, started the car, and flipped on the headlights. But now, it wasn't holding the head. Standing in the front glass doors of the theater was the same figure. The wiry hair, the pale, lifeless face, just standing there, watching. That's when I saw it. I peeled out of the parking lot so fast, my tires screeched on wet asphalt. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway across town. I didn't go home. I didn't want it to know where I lived. The mouth of the head hung open in a silent scream, stitched into place over whatever whoever was beneath. It was wearing it. I'm not the type to scare easily, and I'm definitely not the kind of person who makes up stories for attention. But what happened to me that night still keeps me up sometimes. It was supposed to be just a quiet, late-night movie, something I've done dozens of times before. I didn't think twice about going alone. The theater was nearly empty. The weather was miserable, and I was looking forward to having the whole place to myself. But I wasn't alone. I only realized that after it was too late, and now I wish I'd never gone. I work freelance, so my schedule's pretty unpredictable. One of the perks is getting to do things when most people can't, like catching a late-night movie on a Tuesday. That night, it was raining hard, and the theater near my apartment was showing a late screening of Hereditary, one of my favorites. I've always preferred watching movies alone, especially horror. There's something about sitting in a near-empty theater, surrounded by silence, that makes the scares feel more real. This particular theater was old, kind of run down, with creaky red seats and yellowed popcorn lights in the halls. It smelled like a mix of butter, mildew and dust, not comforting, but weirdly nostalgic. I bought my ticket, grabbed a soda, and walked into Theater 4. It was completely empty. Perfect. I picked a seat dead center, kicked my feet up, and waited for the movie to start. I felt completely alone, peaceful, at first. About 15 minutes into the movie, just as the tension on screen was starting to build, I heard something behind me, soft, slow footsteps on the carpeted aisle. I hadn't heard the door open. I turned around, expecting to see someone who slipped in late, but there was no one there, just rows of empty seats fading into darkness. I brushed it off as part of the movie's sound design and kept watching. Then I heard it again. Closer this time. A low, deliberate shuffle, followed by what sounded like breathing, steady and just behind my left shoulder. I turned again, this time faster, heart starting to race. Still nothing. The aisle was empty. I leaned back in my seat and told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the building's old pipes were groaning. Maybe I was just too into the movie. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. I looked down toward the front rows and saw something or someone duck behind a seat. All I caught was a pale sliver of a face and messy dark hair. They weren't watching the movie. They were watching me, and somehow I knew they had been for a while. I sat frozen, eyes locked on the row where I saw that head disappear. The screen flickered with light and shadow, but I wasn't watching the movie anymore. My ears strained for any sound, a breath, a creak, anything, but the theater had gone dead silent, too silent. I told myself to get up, go tell the staff, or at least switch seats, but I didn't move. I just sat there, staring, trying to convince myself that maybe it was nothing. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, in the dark. Then I saw it again. Not in the same spot, closer. 3 rows in front of me, that pale head slowly peeked up from behind a seat. It rose slowly, deliberately, until I could see the eyes wide open, unblinking, staring right at me. I gasped out loud. I wasn't just creeped out now. I was scared. The face didn't move, just stared. The eyes were glassy, the expression off, like the muscles weren't quite working right. I still couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. The hair was wiry, sticking out in every direction, like it hadn't been washed in weeks. I stood up quickly, my seat creaking loud against the silence. The head ducked back down. I walked fast down the aisle toward the exit, but to get there, I had to pass the row where it was hiding. As I reached it, I instinctively looked down the row, expecting to see someone crouching. Instead, I saw something I'll never forget. A body stretched along the floor, hidden behind the seats, and above it, a hand holding up what looked like a severed head, mounted on a stick. That's when I ran. I didn't care what it was. I just ran. I shoved through the exit door so hard it slammed against the wall. My breath was ragged, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I sprinted down the hallway toward the lobby, not daring to look back. My mind raced. Was it a prank, a prop, a sick joke? But no one else was in the theater. No one else should have been there. The lobby was empty. No staff at the counter. No late-night workers milling about. I looked around, shouting, "Hello, someone's in Theater 4. Someone's doing something messed up in there." No answer. I fumbled for my phone to call the police, but I had no signal. Not a single bar. I glanced outside. The rain was still pouring. The parking lot mostly empty. My car sat all the way in the back, under a flickering street lamp. I didn't wait. I bolted for the exit doors, yanked one open, and sprinted for my car, splashing through puddles. I didn't care how soaked I got. I just needed to be inside. Doors locked, engine running. I threw myself into the driver's seat, started the car, and flipped on the headlights. That's when I saw it. Standing in the front glass doors of the theater was the same figure. The wiry hair, the pale, lifeless face, just standing there, watching. But now, it wasn't holding the head. It was wearing it. The mouth of the head hung open in a silent scream, stitched into place over whatever whoever was beneath. I peeled out of the parking lot so fast, my tires screeched on wet asphalt. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway across town. I didn't go home. I didn't want it to know where I lived. But it already did. I just didn't know that yet. I ended up sleeping in my car that night, parked outside a 24-hour gas station with the lights on and people nearby. I couldn't stop shaking. I didn't tell anyone at first who would believe me. Eventually, I called the theater the next day. They told me Theater 4 had been locked all night after the last showing. Their security cameras malfunctioned, apparently. No footage available. Later that week, I checked my home security camera out of habit. At 2:43 a.m., the night it happened, a motion alert had been triggered. The footage showed someone standing at the edge of my driveway, just outside the light. The shape was blurry, but the outline of the head, too large, too round, made my stomach drop. I moved apartments the following month. Never went back to that theater. I haven't watched a horror movie in a cinema since. I don't care if you think I'm paranoid, or that it was a mask, or a prank. Whatever it was, it followed me. So if you ever find yourself alone in a dark theater, and you think someone might be watching you, don't wait to find out, just leave. Because you might not be watching the movie. Something else might be watching you. I used to work the night shift at a dying movie theater tucked inside an old half-abandoned mall. Most nights were dead silent. Just me, the hum of the machines, and the occasional late-night weirdo. I never believed in ghosts, or cursed places, or anything like that. But there was something about Theater 6. The projection system in that room never worked right. It turned itself on at strange hours, played films we didn't schedule, and once it showed something I was never supposed to see. I thought I was the one running the projector, but something else was watching me. I started working at Valley Crest Cinemas during my second year of college. It wasn't a fancy theater, just 6 screens, flickering lights, and the lingering smell of stale popcorn and mildew. The place was practically dead most nights, which was perfect for someone like me who preferred silence over crowds. I worked the late shift as a projectionist, making sure the reels ran smoothly, the lights dimmed at the right time, and the few guests we had weren't left staring at a black screen. The projection booth was this narrow, elevated hallway above the theaters, dusty, hot, and full of ancient equipment that rattled like it was held together with duct tape and regret. It was boring work, honestly. I'd load up the film, start the timer, then scroll through my phone or nap in the manager's office. Every theater had its quirks, but Theater 6 was different. The bulb would flicker without warning, the reel would skip frames like someone was tampering with it, and sometimes the projector would just turn on by itself. At first I chalked it up to faulty wiring, but the longer I worked there, the more it felt like something or someone wanted that room to stay active, even when it was empty. One night, after the final screening ended and all the guests had cleared out, I was locking up the projection booth when I heard the familiar whir of a reel starting behind me. Theater 6. The projector had turned on by itself again. I went to shut it off, annoyed more than anything, but when I looked through the booth window, something stopped me cold. There was a film playing. Not a trailer, not a reel I'd loaded, just raw, silent footage. It looked like it was shot with a handheld camera, shaky and grainy. The image showed a long, narrow hallway, dimly lit. The person holding the camera turned a corner, entered a bedroom, and slowly approached the bed. There was someone sleeping there, curled up, unaware. I felt this weird pressure in my chest. The camera kept getting closer to the sleeping person's face. The image wasn't clear, but I swear, it looked like me. I tried to stop the reel, but the controls were frozen. I yanked the power cord from the wall. Nothing. The film kept playing. And that's when I realized it wasn't coming from our system. That projector was playing something we didn't own, something we weren't meant to see. I rushed down from the booth and into Theater 6, hoping maybe, somehow, there was an actual reel playing, or maybe one of the other workers was pulling a prank. But the theater was empty. No guests, no staff, just rows of seats bathed in the flickering glow of the screen. And the film was still rolling. I looked up. The footage had changed. It wasn't in a bedroom anymore. It was back in the theater, this theater. Theater 6. Same rows, same torn seat covers, same flickering exit light in the back. The camera was walking through the aisles slowly, deliberately. From its angle, it looked like someone or something was creeping toward the front rows. I turned to check behind me. No one. But when I turned back to the screen, the camera had moved again. Now it was in the projection booth, staring out the window I had just been standing in. It was from the exact angle I had watched the film from just minutes ago. I bolted for the stairs, back to the booth. I don't know what I expected to catch someone, find an explanation. Instead, I found the control panel fried. The system was off, completely cold, as if it hadn't been powered in hours. Yet the film was still playing. I stood there frozen, staring at the silent, dead projector. No light, no spinning reels, while the image on the screen below kept moving. Then I noticed something else. On the monitor next to the console, someone had scheduled a screening for the next night at 3:33 a.m. Title, The Projectionist. Only I hadn't touched that monitor in days, and no one else had access to that terminal. I should have quit right then, but something pulled me back the next night. Curiosity, maybe, or the sick feeling that whatever this was wouldn't stop until I saw it through. I got to the theater just after 3 a.m. The place was dead silent, no lights on, no staff. I unlocked the booth and went straight to the panel. Sure enough, the schedule still showed it. The Projectionist, 3:33 a.m., Theater 6. I tried to delete it. Wouldn't let me. I waited. 3:32. 3:33. The projector in Theater 6 powered on by itself. I looked through the booth window. The screen lit up. This time, the footage was live. I could tell because the camera angle was of the projection booth from inside Theater 6, from the audience's perspective. On the screen, I could see myself standing there in the booth, staring down just as I was now. And then slowly, something began to rise into frame behind me. A figure, tall and wrong-looking, its limbs too long, its movements jerky, like a puppet on tangled strings. I spun around. No one. But the air was cold, heavy, like something had just been there. I looked back at the screen. The figure was now in the booth, standing right behind me, closer, its head tilted unnaturally. I couldn't make out its face, just darkness where its eyes should be. Then it lifted one arm and reached toward the camera, toward me. The projector sparked. The booth lights burst. Everything went black. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just ran out of the booth, out of the theater, into the night, heart hammering like it was trying to punch through my chest. And I swore I'd never go back. But something tells me it followed me anyway. I quit the next morning without saying a word. A week later, a package showed up at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a single 35mm film reel, unlabeled, except for 3 words written in red marker on the canister, now showing tonight. I never opened it. I won't. Whatever was in Theater 6, it wanted an audience. So if you ever work late at a movie theater and hear a projector running when no one's around, don't check it. Don't be curious. Don't stay late. Because once it starts playing your story, it doesn't stop. I used to love going to the movies alone. Late shows, nearly empty theaters, just me and the screen. It was my way to unwind after long days. I always sat in the same spot, D7. It felt like my seat. But a few months ago, I noticed someone else had the same idea. He started sitting next to me every time, no matter the movie, no matter the day. And that's when things started getting really uncomfortable. I live alone and work from home, so my schedule's pretty flexible. Most nights after dinner, I'd head to the local movie theater just a few blocks from my apartment. It wasn't anything fancy. 6 screens, decent sound, usually pretty dead on weeknights. That was the appeal. No crowds, no loud kids, just me, my popcorn, and whatever was playing. Over time, I developed a habit. I always chose the same seat, D7. It was near the middle, just slightly to the left, perfect view, easy to get out without climbing over anyone. I went so often, the staff recognized me. Sometimes they even asked if I wanted my usual. Everything was routine, normal, until one Thursday night when I saw a man already sitting in D6, the seat right next to mine. The theater was nearly empty. Out of 100 open seats, he picked the one directly beside me. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he just liked that spot too. But then I saw him again the next week. Same seat, same time. That's when I started to wonder if it was really a coincidence, or if he was there for me. After the second time seeing him, I started paying more attention. He was always alone, mid-40s, clean-shaven, wore a dark baseball cap low over his eyes, never bought snacks, never looked at his phone, just walked in, sat next to me, and stared at the screen. Not once did he acknowledge me. I began switching things up. Different movies, different times, sometimes early afternoon, sometimes the last show of the night, but he kept showing up, always within a seat or two of me. If I picked D7, he was in D6. If I moved to E8, he'd be in E7. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe I just kept running into the same guy, a local with the same habit. But the more it happened, the less random it felt. He never made conversation, but there was something about his presence, like he was too aware of me. One night, I deliberately arrived late, hoping the theater would already be dark, so I could pick a seat unseen. But as soon as I walked in and sat down, I turned to my right. He was already there, staring straight ahead, smiling, just slightly. That was the moment I stopped brushing it off. I left the theater before the movie ended, heart racing. The smile wasn't big, barely noticeable, but it was intentional, like he knew I was watching, like he wanted me to see it. I went home and checked my ticket history. Over the past 6 weeks, I'd seen 9 different movies on 7 different days, at 5 different times, and he had been there every single time. I didn't know his name. I'd never seen him enter or leave, but somehow he always knew where I was going to be. I stopped going to the movies for 2 weeks after that, just stayed home, tried to forget about it. Then one Friday night, I got the urge again. I picked a theater across town, one I'd never been to before, and bought a ticket under a new email address. I didn't choose my usual seat. I chose something random, H12. When I walked into the theater, it was almost empty. I sat down, scanned the room. No sign of him. I told myself it was over, that maybe it had all been in my head. Then, about 20 minutes into the film, I glanced back casually, and my stomach dropped. He was sitting 4 rows behind me, dead center, his head just barely visible above the seat, not watching the movie. Watching me. He didn't move, didn't flinch when I saw him, just stayed locked in that position, like he'd been there the entire time. I didn't wait. I walked out, fast, didn't even look back, drove home with every mirror in my car tilted to the back seat. I didn't go to another movie after that, but somehow that didn't stop him. I tried everything to shake the feeling, and him. I deleted my movie apps, changed my routines, even started going out with friends, more just to avoid being alone. Weeks passed without incident. I almost let myself believe it was done. Then came the email. It looked like an automated message from my old theater, one I hadn't been to in over a month. The subject line read, "Lost item, seat D7. The message was short. "We found your loyalty card in Auditorium 3, Row D, Seat 7. Please come to guest services to claim it." But I hadn't sat in that seat for over 6 weeks. I hadn't even been to that theater. I showed the email to a friend who worked IT. He said it came from a dummy domain, made to look real. Someone wanted me to believe it was from the theater. Later that night, I checked my mailbox. Inside was a plain envelope, No name, no return address. Inside it was a photo, blurry, grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. It was a picture of me, sitting in a theater seat, looking straight ahead, and next to me, an empty chair. D7. I didn't sleep that night. I still don't know how he took that picture, or when. The theater security said there were no active cameras inside the screening rooms, and they had no record of anyone finding a loyalty card. I moved apartments. I changed phone numbers. But some nights, when I pass by a theater or hear trailers playing in the distance, I swear I feel someone behind me, sitting just close enough, waiting for me to sit down first. I haven't been back to a movie theater since. I don't think I ever will. I've tried convincing myself it was just some loner with a weird fixation, or that maybe I imagined parts of it, let paranoia fill in the blanks. But then I remember that photo, the grain, the angle, the way I was sitting, totally unaware. Someone took that while I was inside the theater, and they were close. So close, I could have reached out and touched them. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted. Maybe it was nothing. But if you're someone who enjoys going to the movies alone, take this as a warning. Don't always sit in the same seat. Don't ignore the quiet ones nearby. And if someone keeps showing up next to you, even when they shouldn't know where you'll be, get up and never come back.